Good day to you all. This weekend we celebrate the feast of two giants of the early church, Saints Peter and Paul. Two characters who are in temperament so different, and one could say by oversimplification, Paul represents the liberal church and Peter the conservative wing. Both are celebrated on a single feast day and each bringing a separate gift to the church. Though today their commitment and contribution to the church are highly praised, but as you may know, this wasn't how things were in the beginning if we really take a closer look at these two men. Peter, a humble fisherman, impetuous and outspoken, and once bravely told Jesus he would be willing to die with him. Yet as we know, he denied Jesus 3 times. Paul was a controversial character in his own way. He had a fiery temperament. In his early life, he persecuted Christians, but after his famous conversion, Paul's preaching was intense and direct, and at times he upset some people. It's important to remember, after his conversion, Paul embraced a totally new relationship with God in his ministry. There is no surprise some people at that time had reservations in welcoming those two apostles, especially Paul. Looking at the journey of Peter and Paul, we can see that God writes straight with crooked lines. God used the particular traits that each possessed to help in spreading the gospel. A few years ago, I met a young priest in South America whom I had not seen for many years since our time in the seminary in Trinidad and Tobago. Despite the fact this young man had not been considered ready for ordination by the seminary staff at the end of his studies, his bishop went ahead and ordained him. It was wonderful to hear of the great work this young man is now doing as a parish priest for so many rural communities. Priests and people in his diocese are full of admiration for his ministry. His bishop was able to see something in this priest which reminded me of the call of Peter and Paul. It proves that God can work wonders through us as long as we are willing to offer ourselves and trust Him, like Peter and Paul, and embrace a whole new set of values. The Bible is full of many stories of God selecting people at different times. Though we may get the impression that God is choosing each of us for a particular task, He is really inviting us to be God's presence on earth as His chosen ones. As Father Richard Rowe says, if we allow ourselves to experience being chosen, being a beloved, being somehow God's presence in the world, we invariably communicate that same chosenness to others. As he says, we all have roles and tasks, but at the end of the day, they are all the same because all of us are called to be the divine love or the love of God in a way that no one else can or will. It is important for each and every one of us to remember, just like for Peter and Paul, God has a purpose in our lives. God has led us exactly to where we are right now. We would not be where we are today if we were not being called by God. I am often impressed by people who are initially reluctant to undertake a particular role but do an excellent job at the end of the day, perhaps even surprising themselves. I am grateful for their courage and commitment, which reminds me of the ministry of Saints Peter and Paul, who we celebrate today. May God bless you.